Good afternoon, and thank you for attending today. My name is Tammy Williams. I am a contract specialist for the Texas Lottery Commission. This is the pre-proposal conference for the Risk Review and Compliance Monitoring Services, RFP number 362-2023-0003. On the panel today, we have Juanita Riley. She's the TLC Contracts and Procurement Manager, Eric Williams, TLC Hub Coordinator, and Lee Gary, Senior Contracts Attorney. If you have not already done so, please scan the QR code with a mobile device or use the link that was provided to sign in. A copy of the sign-in sheet will be posted on the ESBD, that's the Electronic State Business Daily, and Texas Lottery website prior to the next business day. This is for sharing of information between prime vendors and subcontractors. Communication will be primarily through the ESBD and Texas Lottery's website. Emails will also be used for the RFP. We strongly advise you to check with your IT department to ensure that our emails will not be filtered away. Some businesses block out the phrases lottery, so you won't be able to receive emails from the Texas Lottery Commission if the filter does not allow it to come through. This conference is being recorded. If you have any questions, please submit your questions in the Q&A feature throughout the conference, and we will answer in the order received during the question and answer sessions at the end of each part. Our Contracts and Procurement Manager, Juanita, will be monitoring the Q&A. We will review the recording after the conference and restate the questions and answers in the Q&A document, which will be released in accordance with the schedule of events. We will give our best responses to your questions today. However, any questions we cannot answer today will be answered in writing and will be included in the Q&A document. Please note the written Q&A document is our final answer. Following this conference, if you think of additional questions, you have an opportunity to submit these in writing. This is your opportunity to ask questions, and we encourage you to do so regarding the requirements of the RFP. If you are unsure of language written in the RFP or need further clarification, this is your chance to receive the information you need. After proposals are received, it is then the Texas Lottery's time to ask questions and/or seek clarification if needed. Please note that any oral communication that would alter or amend the RFP as written is not binding. Any and all changes or modifications to the RFP will be made in writing and posted on the ESBD and the Texas Lottery's website. You are encouraged to check these websites throughout this process and once more before submitting a proposal. Please note that there may be several RFPs posted on the TLC's website at one time, so be sure that you are viewing the correct RFP for updates. This RFP is open to any and all vendors who perform the services. To submit a proposal, you do not have to be registered on the CMBL, Centralized Masters Bidders List, be Hub certified, nor is there any approved vendor list. We will now briefly review the RFP by parts. While we may discuss only certain sections or provisions of the RFP during this conference, all sections and provisions of the RFP are important, and you should read and understand the entire RFP before submitting your proposal. You will have an opportunity after each part to ask general questions. We will begin with Part 1, General Information. Section 1.4, Schedule of Events. This section includes critical dates for this procurement. If there are any changes to these dates up to the deadline for proposals, an amendment will be posted on the ESBD and Texas Lottery's website. Section 1.7. Because we are a state agency, proposals are subject to the Public Information Act, aka Open Records Act. During the procurement process, we will not release any information contained in your proposal. However, after a contract is awarded, your entire proposal is subject to this act and is considered public information. If there is any information in your proposal that is confidential and exempt from disclosure under the Texas Public Information Act, you must mark it as confidential. Examples of confidential information may be financial information or information you consider trade secret or proprietary. It is important that you mark every applicable page and/or section that you consider confidential, and if possible, mark which exception of the Texas Public Information Act it falls under. The Public Information Act is located under Texas Government Code Chapter 552. Also, you cannot mark your entire proposal confidential. On the Office of the Attorney General's website is the Public Information Handbook, which lists all the exceptions. If you have information that you consider confidential, please respond to Section 1.7 and list the information, including a brief commentary or justification, in addition to marking individual sections and/or pages. Juanita, are there any questions on Part 1?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Juanita Riley. I'm the Contracts and Procurement Manager. And Tammy, there are no questions for Part 1.
Thank you. Part 2, Proposal Process. Section 2.1, I am the sole point of contact for the RFP. All questions should be directed to me, including any hub questions. Section 2.4, questions shall be submitted via email by the deadline in the schedule of events. Questions submitted after the deadline in the schedule of events will not be answered. Responses will be posted on the TLC and ESBD websites on or before the date listed in the schedule of events. Section 2.5, proposals shall be submitted in the format prescribed in this section. Proposals shall be submitted electronically. Proposals are due no later than the deadline established in the schedule of events. Late proposals will not be considered. No exceptions will be made. Section 2.5.1, electronic responses shall be sent via email to procurement@lottery.state.texas.us. And I want to just make sure it's procurement@lottery.state.tx.us. Proposers shall place the RFP name and number along with the proposer name into the subject line of their email. Please submit one signed original proposal, one copy of evidence of financial soundness, one signed original cost proposal, and one signed original of Part 5. These must be in a searchable and unprotected portable document format, PDF. Each PDF file attachment shall be a separate document and clearly named. Be sure that your proposal contains responses to all sections and parts of the RFP, and be sure your proposal numbering corresponds with that of the RFP. You may provide a blanket acknowledgement and acceptance for parts 1, 2, and 3, unless a section requires a specific detailed answer. Part 4 and 6 require a section-by-section response. That means for our 4.1, we're looking for a 4.1 in your response that corresponds to the RFP. For financial soundness, please submit one copy. For Part 5, please submit one signed original. The cost proposal, please submit one signed original. If proposers feel a section does not provide for a detailed response, then it is acceptable to state that you agree and will comply. Section 2.5.6, the proposer's commitment, Attachment A, and the background information certification, Attachment D1, must be signed by an officer or agent of proposer with the authority to contractually bind the proposer, and the signed original attachments must be included in the original proposal. Section 2.5.9. Please note, copyrighted proposals are unacceptable and may be rejected. Section 2.6. This section covers the format and content for which your proposal must be organized, which includes letter of transmittal, executive summary, section-by-section response to the RFP, evidence of financial soundness, hub subcontracting plan, cost proposal, proposer's commitment, and background information certification. Section 2.7, letter of transmittal. The letter must state that the proposal is valid for 180 days. Also, include an overview of why your company is most qualified and include a statement accepting the terms and conditions in Part 3 and/or any exceptions to such. Section 2.8, Executive Summary. This should be a full and concise summary and shall not exceed 5 pages. Section 2.10, Proposer's Cost Proposal. Cost proposals must be in the format included in Attachment G and needs to be a separate PDF file. We only need the one signed original. Disclosure of cost in the body of the written proposal is cause for disqualification. The PDF file should only contain the cost proposal. Do not include any marketing materials or other information in your cost proposal. The cost proposal is not opened until after the proposal is scored on its technical merit. Therefore, any additional materials that are included in the cost proposal will not be evaluated. Section 211, Multiple Proposals. Proposers may submit only one proposal and one cost proposal. If a proposer submits more than one proposal, all proposals from that proposer may be rejected. Section 2.12, any RFP changes, modifications, or cancellation will be posted on the TLC and ESBD websites. Section 2.15, Proposal Evaluation. The scoring matrix is attachment F and will be used for evaluation of proposals in response to this RFP. Please note that there are 2 pass-fail categories, HSP analysis and financial analysis. Your proposal essentially goes through 4 phases once it's submitted. Initial assessment for compliance and completeness. It is reviewed for financial analysis and HSP. It is reviewed and evaluated for its technical merit, and the cost proposal is opened and reviewed. If at any given time your proposal is disqualified, you will receive a notice stating such. Juanita, are there any questions on Part 2?
Tammy, there are no questions on Part 2.
Thank you. Part 3, Contractual Terms and Conditions. This part describes the terms and conditions which apply to the procurement process and which will become part of the contract executed pursuant to this RFP. Please read over this entire RFP document to ensure that you fully understand and will comply with all provisions. Any exceptions to the RFP should be clearly stated in the letter of transmittal, providing specific and detailed reasons for each exception, along with suggested alternative language. The contract resulting from the RFP will incorporate the RFP, any amendments, the questions and responses, the contractor's proposal, and cost proposal. Please note a performance bond is required under RFP Section 3.35 and is required under the State Lotteries Act. Therefore, we cannot accept alternatives. Under Section 3.56.1, the contractor will be required to take the Texas Lottery Cybersecurity Training Program and sign the Information Security Agreement. In addition, Section 3.56.2, Prohibited Technologies, Section 3.56.3, Cloud Computing, and Section 3.56.4, Data Protection are recently new laws that have passed. Juanita, are there any questions on Part 3?
Tammy, there are no questions on Part 3.
Thank you. Part 4, Required Information. Sections 4.1 through Sections 4.1 through 4.4. Although these sections seem brief in the RFP, these sections require proposers to gather, compile, and submit a great deal of detailed documentation. Please read these sections in depth and provide all the information in your section by section response. So for 4.1 in the RFP, you want to see 4.1 in your proposal. Section 4.5, Conflict of Interest. In this section, you are asked to disclose any actual, potential, and/or perceived conflicts of interest. Please review this section and make any disclosures. Section 4.6, Financial Soundness. Texas Lottery Commission does a thorough financial analysis of all proposals. Please provide the information requested under this section. If you feel this information is confidential, please mark it as such. This is a pass-fail category on the scoring matrix. It is critical that you provide the requested information. Section 4.7, Background Investigations. TLC reserves the right to conduct an in-depth background investigation on the apparent successful proposer. Section 4.7.2. A background investigation may be conducted on contractually defined vendor principals, meaning those who will be directly involved in selling or leasing the goods or performing the services subject to this RFP or resulting in a contract. This includes partners, shareholders, officers, and directors who are directly involved. Section 4.7.3. Background investigations may be conducted on vendor employees who meet one or more of the criteria under this section. This contract requires a background investigation of employees on site at the Texas Lottery Commission. Background investigations will include fingerprinting. The apparent successful proposer may be required to complete background forms by the prescribed time after the written announcement of the apparent successful proposer by the Texas Lottery. As mentioned before, we ask that all proposers complete and submit attachment D1 with its proposal. This is a certification that your company would not be denied a sales agent license under Texas Government Code 466.155, which is attachment D in the RFP. Section 4.8, Disclosure of Interested Parties. If requested, the successful proposer will be required to fill out a 1295 form with the Texas Ethics Commission. This is for contracts over $1 million, and if you are not a publicly traded company. Juanita, are there any questions on Part 4?
There are no questions on Part 4.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I will turn it over to Eric Williams, who's going to go over Part 5.
Thank you, Tammy. Good afternoon. My name is Eric Williams. I am the Hub Coordinator for the Texas Lottery Commission. I will be covering a very crucial element of your proposal, the Hub Subcontracting Plan, or HSP. If you're not the individual responsible for preparing the HSP, please pass this information to them and recommend they watch the video of this pre-proposal conference, which will be posted on the agency website. The Hub Subcontracting Plan is used to identify both Hub and non-Hub subcontractors that will be utilized under the awarded contract. All proposers, Hub and non-Hub, submitting a response to this RFP are required to submit an HSP. No one is exempt. As Tammy previously mentioned, the HSP is a pass-fail element of this RFP. No evaluation points are given for the HSP, and proposers must submit an HSP with their proposal, regardless of their subcontracting intentions. Any proposal received, not including an HSP, will be rejected, and the technical portion will not be evaluated. So it's important to submit a completed HSP with your proposal and also during the reviewing process. If it is determined that your submitted HSP has failed, your proposal will be disqualified and will not be evaluated. The HSP process is governed by a rule established by the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts. For Section 5.1 of the RFP, you are responsible for reviewing this rule. Assistance for preparation of the HSP. To assist you with the HSP, the Texas Lottery Commission provides the following assistance and resources. All vendors are strongly encouraged to take advantage of all the resources. This pre-proposal conference will be posted on the agency website. A copy of the TLC pre-bid proposal conference booklet regarding HSP requirements is available on the agency's website. A HSP quick checklist is included in the RFP. Proposers have the opportunity to submit written HSP questions at any time up until the proposal deadline. However, we suggest you submit questions early to allow yourself the necessary time to cure any deficiencies with your plan. You are encouraged to start working on your plan right away to give yourself plenty of time. The HSP Q&A is posted on the TLC website and the ESBD, which will be a rolling document, so be sure to check the date posted. We will review drafts of your HSP to identify deficiencies and provide feedback. However, we will not state whether your draft has passed or failed. We will conduct one-on-one workshops upon request. These may be conducted via Zoom, Teams, or telephone conference call. The purpose of the workshops is to discuss the Hub subcontracting requirements, answer questions specific to conducting the good faith effort, and completing the HSP forms. This process will also allow you the opportunity to submit a draft HSP for review by the Lottery Commission prior to the proposal deadline. As previously stated, this process does not guarantee that the HSP submitted with your proposal will pass. It is the proposal's responsibility to understand the requirements of the HSP and to perform all the required steps prior to submitting their HSP. The last date to review any draft HSPs for deficiencies and one-on-one workshops is listed in section 1.4 of the RFP. As per section 2.1 of the RFP, please forward all questions or requests to Tammy. Requirements for completing the HSP forms. The definition of a subcontractor is very broad and applies to any third-party vendor used to fulfill any portion of the contract. Our definition of a subcontractor is a person who contracts with a successful proposer to work, to supply commodities, or contribute toward completing work for the Texas Lottery Commission. In other words, if the successful proposer who is awarded this contract is paying anyone who is not an employee to provide goods and or services, they're very likely subcontracting under this definition. These individuals will receive a 1099, unlike your employees who receive W-2s. We have identified potential subcontracting opportunities in section 5.5.1 of the RFP. These areas may or may not be subcontracted depending on the proposal's existing resources, employees, and business model. You are not limited to the list in the RFP. However, if you intend to subcontract any portion of the contract and it's not listed, you are responsible for identifying it in your HSP submission. We have identified in the RFP a list of hub vendors by CMBL class and commodity description to assist you in finding potential hub vendors. The Lottery Commission does not endorse, recommend, or attest to the capabilities of any company or individual listed within the RFP or on the CMBL Hub Search Directory. Proposals who intend to subcontract any portion of the contract must indicate in the HSP form that they intend to subcontract and must perform one of the 3 good faith effort methods identified below. The goal of this good faith effort is to actively involve hubs in the Texas procurement process and ensure they receive a fair share of state business. Please check the appropriate boxes in section 2, which is the respondent subcontracting intentions of the HSP form, and perform one of the 3 good faith effort methods. The optional checklist will assist you in determining which of the 3 methods you should use. Good faith effort method A has 2 options. Method A, option 1. This option is for the proposer who will use only Texas certified hubs for all subcontracting opportunities listed in section 2B, the respondent subcontracting intentions on the HSP forms. If you use this method, please verify online that the hub vendor is currently an active hub listed on the CMBL. Method A, option 2, meeting the specified hub contract goal. This option is for the proposer who will use a combination of non-hub and Texas certified hub vendors for the identified subcontracting opportunities listed in section 2B, the respondent subcontracting intentions on on the HSP forms. However, the specified hub contract goal of 23.4% can only be met by the subcontracting opportunities awarded to the Texas certified hub vendors with whom the proposer has contracted for 5 years or less. If you use this method, please verify online that the hub vendor is currently an active hub listed on the CMBL. Method B, the good faith effort outreach. This option is for the proposer who will perform the good faith effort outreach for each identified subcontracting opportunity listed in Section 2B, the respondent subcontracting intentions on the HSP form. And this will be done by notifying at least 3 Texas certified hubs per subcontracting opportunity, providing these hubs at least 7 working days to respond, excluding the day the solicitation was emailed, mailed, or faxed to the hub vendors, weekends and holidays, and any other day the executive director of the Lottery Commission has closed the agency. Providing scope of work for hubs to determine whether they are interested, providing a location where the specifications are located, i.e. a link to the posting on the ESBD or a physical location. Information regarding insurance bonding requirements if applicable, and in addition, notifying a minimum of 2 minority women trade organizations and/or business development centers providing the same information above, as well as the same time frame for response. A mentor may utilize a protege from a state agency sponsored mentor-protege agreement for the subcontracting if the protege is able to provide the services. The mentor-protege relationship may be utilized in lieu of additional soliciting to hubs. Proposals using this method must perform outreach even for areas where a proposer has a pre-existing or exclusive subcontracting relationship that will be used in performance of this contract. If you use this method, again, please verify online that the hub vendor is currently an active hub listed on the CMBL. The proposer who does not intend to subcontract. Proposals who indicate that their company will not be subcontracting any portion of the contract and will be fulfilling the entire contract with their own existing resources, including its own equipment, supplies, materials, and/or employees, will be self-performing. Keep in mind that a pre-existing subcontracting relationship is considered subcontracting, in which case you cannot claim self-performance. A pre-existing subcontracting relationship is a business affiliation your company has with a third-party vendor who is currently supplying your company with goods and/or services and will continue to supply these goods and/or services to assist you in the performance of this contract. If you determine that your company is capable of fulfilling the entire contract with your own equipment, supplies, materials, and/or employees, please check the appropriate box in Section 2, the respondent subcontracting intentions of the HSP form, complete Section 3, which is the self-performing justification by providing a thorough explanation of how your company will perform the entire contract with its own employees, supplies, materials, and/or equipment as it relates to Part 5 of the RFP, the scope of services. Complete Section 4 of the HSP form, the affirmation prior to submitting your HSP with your proposal. Our evaluation process for proposals received on or before the deadline for proposals is to review and evaluate the HSP and all documentation to determine if the HSP has passed or failed. During our review, we may request for clarification of information or representations in your submitted HSP. Again, there are no evaluation points assigned to the HSP. It is strictly a pass or fail element. If it is determined that your HSP has failed, the technical portion of your proposal will not be evaluated. Following the award of the contract, any proposed changes to the HSP must be submitted for review and approved by the agency. A written change approval form will be provided by the Lottery Commission. Subcontracting without prior authorization is a breach of contract. Monthly subcontracting expenditure reports are required as a condition of payment. Also, the successful proposer must provide a written notice to each subcontractor informing them of their selection. A copy of this notice must be provided to the Lottery Commission no later than 10 working days after contract awarded, as stated in section 5.6.1 of the RFP. The notice must specify at a minimum the contracting agency's name, its point of contact for the contract award number, the subcontracting opportunity to be performed, the approximate dollar value of the subcontracting opportunity, and the expected percentage of the total contract that the subcontracting opportunity represents. Again, we strongly encourage you to take full advantage of all the available resources to assist you with your HSP submission. Once you submit your HSP with a proposal, there is no opportunity to cure. Please consult the schedule of events and make sure that you know which dates are critical in terms of preparing and submitting the HSP. In closing, I'll remind you again, if you're not the person who is responsible for completing the HSP, please pass this information to them, as well as let them know that today's pre-proposal conference will be available for view on the agency website. Please submit questions regarding the HSP after this conference in writing, and they will be answered and posted on the agency website and the ESBD. HSP questions can be submitted up until the deadline for proposals, which is listed in section 1.4 of the RFP. Juanita, are there any questions regarding section 5 of the RFP?
Yes, Eric, we did receive one question.
Okay.
Question is, when substituting to use a mentor instead of the hub subcontractor, does it have to be a minority or woman-owned individual?
If you are mentoring let's call them a non-hub vendor, you can use that non-hub vendor, but it will not circumvent the hub subcontracting plan or using a hub vendor where we're talking about the 24.3%. That will not circumvent that. But I mean, you could use them, but it will not circumvent the 24.3% for method 2, method A2.
There are no other questions.
Okay. Thank you, and I will turn it back over to Tammy.
Thank you, Eric. Just a final note on part 5. The HSP Q&A is a running document. For any additional questions that we receive, we will add to the same document and revise the date on the document. There will only be one link on our website or attachment on the ESBD for the HSP questions. So please check the websites often to see any changes since you last viewed it. Part 6, Scope of Services. Okay, part 6, Scope of Services. I was on mute, so I apologize. I'm going to go ahead and repeat what I said just in case it was missed. I think it was. So a final note on the HSP, part 5. The HSP Q&A is a running document. For any additional questions that we receive, we will add to the same document and revise the date on the document. There will only be one link on our website or attachment on the ESBD for the HSP questions. So please check the websites often to see any changes since you last viewed it. Okay, part 6, Scope of Services. Part 6 requires a section-by-section response. I will not be going into detail on this section. This is your opportunity to tell us how you will perform the services described in each section. It's not enough to say you can do something. Tell us how you will do it. Provide examples of techniques that you've used for success. Posers need to demonstrate their abilities to do the work requested. Juanita, are there any questions on part 6?
There are no questions on part 6, but I did get another question on the hub. And give me 1 second. They asked, who can I email about the HSP and hub questions? And you will be emailing Tammy on that in regards to those questions.
That is correct, Juanita.
Thank you.
All HSP questions will be forwarded to Tammy.
Thank you. All right, so we are towards the end of our conference. Please submit any questions in the Q&A feature, or you can submit questions in accordance with the schedule of events. And some final reminders, all scope of service questions must be submitted in writing via email to me by the deadline in the schedule of events. Scope of service questions that are not submitted in writing by the time and date specified will not be answered. If you have a question on the RFP process, you can contact me and I may be able to respond. Generally, this is the case for all sections except part 6, but don't hesitate to ask. Make notes of all dates in the schedule of events. Proposers are responsible for checking the ESBD and TLC websites for any and all notices, amendments, and Q&A regarding this RFP. We will not directly email these to you. Prior to submission of your proposal, please review the entire RFP carefully to ensure that you submit all required information and/or documentation. The pre-proposal conference video and sign-in sheet will be on the ESBD and TLC's website prior to the end of the next business day. Juanita, are there any final questions before we go?
Tammy, there are no questions at this time.
Okay. Well, this concludes our conference. Thanks again for your attendance and have a great day.